Greetings, I'm John the Spirit.
I'm Arch Ezekiel.
This is the end of Ultimate Alchemy, and welcome to Ultimate Alchemy Recap Supershorts. Once we got the magical power of the Rainbow Generator, we obtained the power to run Draconic Evolution, which generally tends to require really ginormous amounts of RF that we would never be able to produce with, say, a boring nether star generator. There were a couple other options we could have done for power, including big reactors, and although Draconic Evolution has its own reactor, not only is it dangerous to run, but it requires you to have enough power to get Draconic Evolution stuff in the first place. So the Rainbow Generator seemed like the best bet, because we'd already done big reactors. But with the power to make Draconic Evolution, we can take the final steps toward True Clay, the ultimate alchemy. Now, it's one thing to make true clay, it's another thing to automate it, which is the extra secret goal of the mod. It's not secret. It's just a fun extra thing you can do, and we certainly did do it. As you can see, we have a true clay being made right now. Wow. But before we actually get to how we made the true clay, let's talk first about how to get Draconic Evolution stuff. Using the Dragon Head and Metal Press allows you to turn bricks into draconium. Once you have draconium, you can make a variety of expensive basic ingredients, like the draconic core, which requires it's not that expensive, but diamonds are pretty annoying in this mod pack, so... Your main goal in Draconic Evolution is to get these chaotic fusion crafting injectors and this fusion crafting core. Those are the main crafting mechanic in Draconic Evolution. Our secondary goal was to get really rapid power distribution, because we were seeing that our flux plugs were only transmitting like 256,000 RF per tick, and since our Rainbow Generator produces 25 million RF per tick, we thought it was a lot better to have that much RF processing. And the best way to transfer that much power is using energy IO crystals from Draconic Evolution. There was a situation where we saw that the flux plugs were successfully transferring 25 million, so I guess weird shit was happening, and we probably could have used those, but it was fun to play with these anyway. The basic energy relay crystals are pretty inexpensive to make, if inexpensive means 4 diamonds, and then there's the Wyvern energy relay crystals as well if you want to upgrade them. An energy relay network requires 2 types of things, energy IO crystals and energy relay crystals, and you can just make them out of each other. You place down energy IO crystals on things that take or use power, like this Rainbow Generator, and you can shift right click to set it between input and output mode. In order to actually transfer power using these crystals, you have to link them. To actually link up these energy relay crystals, you need a crystal binder. You can see when I'm holding it that you can see the links in real life. You can link input-output crystals with other input-output crystals. The number of links on a crystal is stated in its little description on the bottom right. These relay crystals have enough links that it's worth using them if you're trying to power, for example, the fusion crafting injector. Although we technically could have done this by just running links from one crystal to the next crystal to the next crystal until we were all the way through. To actually link 2 crystals, you can start by shift-right-clicking on your source crystal. This saves that source crystal to your wrench. That source crystal remains saved, so you can right-click anywhere you want to link to, and it will just attempt to link there without resetting your source link. Which is convenient if you want to link 1 relay crystal to like 10 IO crystals. You can shift-right-click on another block to reset the source, or shift-right-click in the air to get rid of the source altogether. Now let's talk about fusion crafting. In order to fusion craft, you need a number of fusion crafting injectors and a fusion crafting core. The fusion crafting injectors cannot just be placed anywhere in a cube around the core. From each direction of the core, up, down, left, right, north, south, there is a 3x3 rectangular prism, going from the center of the core out in this direction, for example, but not over here. We just have them really close, though, for convenience. To actually perform a recipe, like, for example, upgrading draconium to another important ingredient, awakened draconium, you put the core ingredient of the recipe into the fusion crafting core, and then you put each required ingredient into one of the injectors. Crafting recipes like Awakened Draconium often have duplicate items in the recipe, but you must have an injector for every individual item in the recipe. However, you can put multiple items in those injectors. So right now, each of these injectors has 4 items in it. For convenience of automation, you can force single item mode to be active or inactive. If it's active, you can only insert 1 item into the injector. But we did not automate any recipes other than the True Clay recipe, so we didn't need to use that feature. We are just showing you how the crafting works right now, which we did manually and vaguely painstakingly. But anyway, once you have all the items you need, the fusion crafting will allow you to press start. And then you'll see energy go through the links, which I think is a pretty cool visual. And once they fill up, which was very fast in this case thanks to our rainbow generator, it will run the crafting procedure. It'll only run one crafting procedure at a time, but to automate it, you can activate it with a redstone signal. Once Arch puts down an RF Tools redstone timer and turns it, I think I could turn it with a crescent hammer, it will activate the craft, and once the craft is finished, it'll activate another. This craft is about to finish, so we should see it go again in a second. Yep. There we go. To start fusion crafting, you need the basic fusion crafting injector. Future upgrades of the fusion crafting injector are made in fusion crafters. So we made initially 10 of these basic fusion crafting injectors and upgraded them one by one using all of these ingredients into the Wyvern fusion crafting injectors. Different tiers of fusion crafting exist and require you to use that tier of fusion crafting injector. We ultimately had to upgrade to the chaotic fusion crafting injector because the true clay craft is a chaotic tier craft. It's a secret little gate that you might not notice if you were playing the mod pack for the first time and didn't notice this tier chaotic. You'd have all your ingredients to run true clay and then realize, oh no, I need the chaotic tier fusion crafting injectors? There are two options to make the chaotic fusion crafting injectors. One requires Lump of Galgador and is therefore a terrible option, and one does not, but costs a lot of RF. But I mean, making the Awakened Draconium already costs a lot of RF, so I don't really understand why anyone would pick this option when you can pick this slightly cheaper one. To get the Dragon Egg, we just used, as before, the Time Machine with an egg and Void Vapors, and to get the Chaotic Core, you can get the Chaos Shard by pulverizing bedrock, which you make by smelting quadruple compressed cobblestone. Anyway, once we had all our chaotic fusion injectors, it was time to make true clay, except we weren't going to actually make true clay until we can automate it. But let me tell you how to make these last two ingredients. To make the Wither Skeleton Skulls, you need to apply Industrial Grade Evil to Skeleton Skulls. Skeleton Skulls come from bone blocks, which we already automated for the death generator down there. The Industrial Grade Evil comes from smelting down drops of evil, which come from crushing TNT. Incidentally, crushing TNT gives you back 5 gunpowder, so the only thing you need to run this system permanently is extra sand. The other thing we needed to automate, which is a little bit more of a doozy, is Podzol, which requires dirt, which we have, but also empowered oil. We'll talk about empowered oil shortly, when Arch gets back, but first let me talk about automating some of the last remaining items. Remember when we talked about automating the Nether Star, I might have mentioned that in order to fully automate the file crafting, we needed to automate Aqua Salus Mundus. Aqua Salus Mundus is magma crucibled from Salus Mundus, which you get from crushing lavender quartz, which you can get from surrounding magenta dye with mana quartz. The most convenient way to get magenta dye was, of course, using our petal system. So we just repurposed that, added a recipe for magenta petals, and then at our RF Tools crafter that makes pink dye, we also added a recipe for magenta dye. Mana quartz was a little more difficult, because you need to put quartz into a mana pool to get it. But since we needed to automate quartz using the conjuration catalyst, we figured we'd do them at the same time. To automate quartz, we have a barrel which holds nether quartz, a hopper which pulls into an open crate and drops that nether quartz into a mana pool with a conjuration catalyst, a detector which turns off the hopper when there's sufficient quartz in the system, an external storage on the barrel, and a hopper hawk that picks up quartz and puts it in the barrel. Thankfully, the Hopper Hawk is very fast and can pick up quartz the moment it's finished duplicating in the Conjuration Catalyst. That way, if we drop quartz into this mana pool, it's not just going to infinitely duplicate itself until the Hopper Hawk finally gets rid of it all. The Hopper Hawk gets rid of it quickly. So basically, when there's insufficient quartz in the system, this hopper pulls quartz into the open crate, drops it into the mana pool, and the Hopper Hawk picks up that quartz and puts it back in the chest, the barrel. We reused this Hopper Hawk, which is something we've done a few times in this tiny, compact area, in order to also gather mana quartz. To get mana quartz, we just use a crafter to shove nether quartz into this open crate. It drops into the mana pool, and then the Hopper Hawk picks up the mana quartz and puts it in this chest on which we have an importer. With the mana quartz, we can automate Salus Mundus, and of course, now that nether quartz is automated, nether quartz is automated. Very eloquent of me, I know. Automating diamonds requires automating the additive process of the arc furnace. Diamonds require both compressed coal balls and, theoretically, 4 lapis lazuli. The compressed coal balls go on the left and the lapis on the right. Important note, the recipe does not always use all 4 lapis. So you can't just set up a recipe that takes 1 compressed coal ball and 4 lapis and makes diamonds, because you're going to be in for an additive completely filling up with lapis. And while that's not the worst thing if your only use of the arc furnace is to make diamonds, you'll be having a little trouble if you also want to use it to make, for example, energetic alloy, which is not required to beat the pack, but is nice. So in order to automate the arc furnace, we did 2 things. We set up a crafter whose recipe for diamonds only inserts compressed coal balls, and then imported those coal balls using Ender IO and a filter into the left side of the arc furnace, which represents adding things to the main ingredient. And to add lapis, we used our friend, the limited item filter from Ender IO, which allowed us to take 64 lapis from an interface and stick it in the additives, and no more. We're still capable of running recipes which require additives that are actually consumed, like energetic alloy, because we have an inserter that's blacklisted on the important ingredients for energetic alloy, steel, and diamonds, and therefore can automatically insert the glowstone and redstone into the correct slot. To make the drops of evil for the industrial grade evil for the wither skeleton skulls, we needed to pulverize TNT like I mentioned before, but since it's a 10% chance only of getting those drops of evil, you need to be careful about how you set up this recipe, and by that I mean, don't set up a recipe at all. We have a pulverizer here, which has its own personal supply of TNT. When it pulverizes TNT into gunpowder, this autocrafter, which can see the contents of the pulverizer, makes TNT using sand and gunpowder. The sand comes from a mini chest on top of it, which has an exporter. The pulverizer's auto input feature also pulls in the TNT from the autocrafter, which is why we have a blue-orange configuration here. The only way to pull the drops of evil out is from the back side, and so we have an importer on the back that pulls in drops of evil through the yellow. Notably, it cannot pull out the gunpowder, which is very convenient for us. So this pulverizer will never run out of TNT because it's always recycling its TNT, and it just continually produces drops of evil until this detector turns on, telling the system that it has too many drops of evil, and then because of the redstone control, the pulverizer will just turn off. We have also added many auxiliary sieves and a mechanical user to make the pulverizer run faster. Once we have the drops of evil, we use the magma crucible to turn drops of evil into industrial grade evil, and then we turn skeleton skulls and industrial grade evil into wither skeleton skulls in the fluid transposer. And now it's time for the real doozy of this system, the podzol, which required empowered oil. Actually Additions provides a set of increasingly powerful oil power, from canola oil to refined canola oil to crystallized oil to empowered oil. To make the initial canola oil, you need to harvest canola seeds. And we did need enough both canola and canola seeds that we had to put 2 mechanical users on this plant. To turn the canola into canola oil, you need a squeezer. You can also use a canola press from Actually Additions, but that recipe is not in JAI and is therefore evil. When there is insufficient canola oil in the system, this detector turns on, allowing this exporter to run. It shoves canola into the squeezer and that canola gets squeezed. We have 2 mechanical users on it, so it runs freakishly fast and is often out of power, but that's how we get enough canola oil. To get refined canola oil, you need to put canola oil in a fractionating still, in which we have many auxiliary reception coils, and if we have insufficient refined canola oil, this exporter turns on, and canola oil turns into refined. To turn refined canola oil into crystallized oil, you need to drop a crystallized canola seed into refined canola oil in-world. Here we have a crafting recipe that just takes a crystallized canola seed and creates crystallized oil. As you can see, it's happening right now. This fluid placer is constantly trying to place refined canola oil, and we're inserting that canola oil using an exporter with a crafting upgrade, although we don't really have a crafting recipe for refined canola oil, it just goes in. You can't filter the fluid collector, so you need a cleverer way to turn it on only when crystallized canola oil is in world. You could potentially do this by using a fun redstone system that drops the crystallized seeds and then turns on the fluid collector after the seeds have dropped, but instead we use integrated dynamics because we're whores for integrated dynamics. The fluid reader from integrated dynamics allows you to read the block version of the fluid in world. Right now it says there's refined canola oil here. We also have a variable card on the right here for crystallized oil, which Arch just made by going into the Portable Logic Programmer, going over to fluid, and then just clicking a bucket in with that fluid. The variable card will be a type fluid with a numerical value. No idea how to change the numerical value, but that's not especially relevant to what we're doing here. Here is the variable card that reads the fluid in world, and finally, in this redstone writer, we have a not equals card. If the fluid in whirl is not crystallized canola oil, this redstone writer turns on and deactivates the fluid collector. So once the fluid becomes crystallized canola oil, it will get collected by the fluid collector. To make empowered oil, you do pretty much the exact same process. You take crystallized oil, drop empowered seeds in it, and then run the same system. We have a crafting upgrade on this exporter so that it always fills the fluid placer with crystallized oil. If we request too much empowered oil at once, this system will break because it doesn't really care whether or not there's oil in the fluid placer. But we typically only request one at a time, so there's never been any problems. To make empowered seeds, you need to put a crystallized seed in the middle of the empowerer and normal seeds on all 4 sides of the empowerer. We already demonstrated the automation of this before, so I won't show you again. But to make the crystallized seeds, you need to automate our friend, the atomic reconstructor. The automation process starts when a crafter puts 16 canola seeds into the open crate. All those seeds drop into a pressure plate, which turns on this timer. The repeater is only here because if we put redstone down, it would get activated by the pressure plate and defeat the purpose of the timer. But anyway, when the timer is allowed to run, it will tick the atomic reconstructor several times in pulse mode until all of the seeds are converted. And then they'll be collected by a hopper hawk into a chest with an importer. We were annoyed to have to make a hopper hawk specifically for this situation, but we didn't really know any other way to effectively collect all the items. And yes, I know, Actually Editions has a filterable item collector, but I literally only remember that just now while recording this at the end of the pack. We really could have saved ourselves so much grief if we used range collectors, but I guess we're just dumb. Let me show you the process whereby crystallized canola seeds are crafted. You can see they've all dropped, and it'll start to tick the atomic reconstructor, and it looks like that was enough to turn them all at once. If it were not, this would be a little bit dangerous, because if the normal canola seeds that hadn't been converted by the first pulse jumped out of the way, then they would no longer be weighing down the pressure plate, and you wouldn't have your canola seeds anymore. Very sad. So a normal, better system would have blocked this pressure plate off completely so that you couldn't see, so that the canola seeds would have no chance to escape. But that's neither here nor there. Once you have your empowered oil, you can use a fluid transposer to make it into podzol, and then all you have to do left is automate true clay in the fusion injectors. As we said before, you can redstone tick the fusion crafting core to start a recipe, so that's not a problem. The main issue would be trying to put all of the items into the injectors. The first issue is that the recipe has 10 items in it, technically, so if you're going to set up a pattern which only allows 9 items, you can't put them all in for true clay. So our recipe for true clay has every single item except the nether star, while the nether stars appear in this interface, which is disableable with redstone, which we'll talk about soon. The crafter is also disableable with redstone. When a crafting recipe occurs, all of the items will be inserted into this chest. This integrated dynamics inventory reader checks that chest, and we use the variable inventory not empty, which turns on when there are items in the chest. If there are items in the chest, we turn on a redstone signal that blocks auto-crafting in the crafter, so the crafter turns off when there's items in the chest. The interface also turns off when there are items in the chest. When an interface is off, it will neither import items which go into import into the system, and it will also not attempt to pull items out of the system into this bottom inventory. Finally, when the inventory is not empty, we allow extract from both the interface and the chest. The result of this is that while there are items in the chest, one nether star gets pulled out of the interface and put into the fusion crafting core. But since the interface can't run while there are items in the chest, the no nether star appears to replenish it, so you get one nether star and one nether star only in the fusion crafting core. Once all the items in the chest have been removed, a nether star will reappear in the interface, but because the redstone writer will have turned off, neither of the extractors will be able to run, so you won't get a second nether star in your fusion crafting core. We don't use limited item filters in this system because, since every single item is different, you don't need to worry about items stacking in a given injector. Technically, this means you can run multiple crafts at once, and in fact that is what we are doing since multi-item mode is active. But we're currently only crafting one true clay at a time, and the crafter waits until that true clay is made to make another one, so it goes perfectly fine. We have here an extract on brown, which does not need a filter because the Draconic Evolution Fusing Crafting Core only allows you to extract items from the bottom slot, which is the output slot of the recipe. And that's how we automated true clay. You get to see it one more time for the camera. It is not the fastest thing in the world. We were not satisfied to merely have a crafting recipe of true clay that works on demand. We actually export clay constantly into this frame drawer using a crafting upgrade. And we already have 337. Isn't that wonderful? And funny enough, our nether star system hasn't even had to run once, because we already ran it once when creating it, and then I ran it again while showing you the video. I will now show you the footage we recorded in the end game. It's a little bit redundant because it has us making true clay again, but it captures our great excitement upon finally finishing the game. In this endgame footage, I'll show you live everything we did from creating our first true clay to entering the end, or whatever the end is. And now we will get our first true clay. Here the items come. And there it goes. Wow.
Oh my god, it's happening.
Amazing. True
There
clay.
it is.
Let's find out if removing it gives us anything weird. Nothing that we can see. Arch is going to try right-clicking in the air with the true clay. Oh, wow, look at that.
Enter.
When I right-click with it, it tells me, pass, enter the end portal to finish. Having backed up our world, we will now enter the end portal. Oh, is it just the credits? Ah, here come the credits. Ultimate Alchemy Exam, a mod pack by R.W. Tema. Thanks for playing. It is a very long credits scene, but as far as Arch tells me, if you press escape, you might not be able to enter the end, and we are trying very hard to not have that happen. So I am just sitting here waiting. Okay, here comes the end of the credits. Question mark. Question mark. Is this perhaps the end of the... Oh no, there's more credits. Okay, I think the credits are finally ending. There is an inspirational quote. We've made it to the end, this lovely little spot. There's a mini chest with student loan bills. Signs from R.W. Tema and Professor Spite saying well done. Does he know we automated true clay? I bet he doesn't. And then this paper is called Diploma, License to Alchemize. Very cool. If you try to exit the room, you'll discover ancient barriers, so you can't get out. But yeah, we did it. Hopefully, if you also play this mod pack, you will get to the end yourself. You don't need to automate everything or do quite all of the things we did in order to get to the end. Nevertheless, since we can, we're just gonna craft a stack of clay right now. Just kidding. Turns out crafting a stack of clay requires a lot of drop of evils, a lot more than I put into this detector. So I'm just gonna let it make 256 drops of evils, and maybe that will be enough. I think it's exactly enough, actually. I guess we'll just craft 16 instead. Looks like we're just waiting for a bunch of crafting ingredients to process. Here goes the clay process. I guess we didn't accelerate the fusion crafting core so that it didn't take 5 million years to finish crafting, did we? Oh, but here, everything's filling in again. Yay! It works perfectly. Arch's automation worked perfectly. Well, now that you've seen our endgame excitement, that is pretty much it for the playthrough. There's no other content. It's all done. Funny enough, and this is probably obvious from my very bad track record, but this is the first time I've ever finished a Minecraft mod pack before. So this was pretty exciting and fun, and I'm glad to have finished a mod pack and also finished a series of YouTube videos about it. If you're seeing this, the promise I made in the first episode of this series, that all of the episodes would be released, has finally come true. Wow. I hope you enjoyed watching this series. I hope the long period of time between episodes didn't prevent you from enjoying the mod pack and succeeding in it anyway, if you decided to play along. And I hope you will enjoy as we move into our next mod pack, Sky Greg, which is a 1.20 Greg Tech mod pack. It's very possible that episodes for that will already have started coming out by the time this episode is out, so maybe I'm just being redundant, but it is what we decided to do next. So, you know, back to my old Monifactory days. If you're wondering, Jonathan, where the fuck is Factorio? The answer is, we got too far ahead, and I stopped recapping Factorio because I couldn't keep up. But maybe one day we will return. I guess it depends on whether you want recaps for Factorio that are like late into the game and have, you know, no prior context for what we're doing. But anyway, thanks for watching this whole series. If you have any feedback on the series in general or anything I can do better, please let me know in the comments. See you next time.